Welcome to the Mental Advantage Podcast. Whether you're an athlete trying to perform at your best when it counts the most, a coach or business leader trying to get more out of your team, or someone looking for more personal growth, this is the place for you. This podcast is your map to guide you to the right mindset, systems, and strategies you need to become the best version of yourself. And now, here's John Cullen and Brandon Allen.
Well, I tell you what, it's everyone's favorite time on the Mental Advantage podcast. We have Dr. Mo back on the show, and this is going to be show 3 of the Grand Slam series that we've done with Dr. Morris Pickens. And, you know, everybody by this point, if you've been dialed in at all, knows what to expect, that you're going to get a lot of really good insight. Isn't that right?
Oh, for sure. I mean, you know, it's round 3 and moving day if you were on the tour.
So, there you go. Nice. I like that.
He is back and full of wisdom, and fortunate enough to have a very cool drop-in guest.
Yeah, look, our first pop-in. And what a pop-in, right? So yeah.
Spencer.
Yep, Spencer Ralston.
Ralston from UGA, and qualified last week to play next week at Torrey Pines, and excited for him. Excited for the listeners to hear him and Mo together. And I tell you what, John, you can tell he's been around Mo for a while, because
he's listening.
He's listening. He's got it dialed in. So I'm excited.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was, what Brandon's referring to there is that Dr. Mo had been working with Spencer. I think they had said, or you'll hear it, but they talk about it at least for a few years. And, this is definitely, and that was a great thing about it. Why we jumped at the opportunity when we found out that Spencer was going to be around when we had the chance to talk to Dr. Mo was, hey, this is a chance to talk about the application of all of these things we've been talking about with Dr. Mo. So show 1 was that practice and preparation. Show 2 was off the course stuff, kind of handling your crap, so to speak, as Dr. Mo says. Yep. And then shows 3 and 4 will be all on the course things, and he'll start to unpack that. So this one is, of course, tied in with the U.S. Open, as Brandon mentioned, which is next week. So we're going to let you listen. Enough of us talking, but we're really excited for this one. Get the pen and paper ready. And as always, if you have any comments, questions, especially anything as it relates to the 4th show we'll do with Dr. Mo, make sure you send those to podcast@mentaladvantage.net. And then, of course, any just comments for us that you
keep those to yourself.
Keep those to yourself. If it's unless it's telling us how great we are, which we always appreciate those. So, and remember, if you're not going to do the 5-star rating, don't do the rating at all. That's our motto around here. So, all right, man. Well, we will talk to you soon, and talk to Dr. Mo in just a minute. All right. Welcome to the Mental Advantage podcast. So, Brandon, this is number 1, just having Dr. Mo back for the 3rd in this Grand Slam collection, this Grand Slam series is exciting enough. But then we get a little bonus guest tonight, because you've got Spencer Ralston, who just literally over the weekend qualified to play in the U.S. Open, which is outstanding, and so happy to have Spencer joining us. And he's going to really, I think, be able to give us a little bit of a different perspective here. And not only has he worked with Dr. Mo over the years, but he's also somebody who just finished a pretty impressive career at the University of Georgia. He played in 51 of a possible 52 tournaments as a collegiate golfer, and just ended up firing a 135, 9 under in the qualifier to get into the U.S. Open. But listen to this. Birdied his final hole to avoid a playoff for the final spot. You talk about pressure, which we do a lot on this show. That's pressure right there.
It's pressure, and clearly under Dr. Mo's tutelage has learned how to kind of breathe and no moment too big.
That's exactly right. Well, Spencer, congratulations, man. We're happy to have you. And Dr. Mo, welcome back to both of you.
Perfect. Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely. And that wasn't just a run-of-the-mill birdie. That was once I got the rundown of how it actually went down, it was good. So Spencer needs to relay that story.
Absolutely. Well, why don't we start here, Spencer? So talk for some of our listeners who aren't maybe familiar with some of these. What's that all about? Like, it's a qualifier to get into the Open. Is it the only one that they had, or was there other ones around the country?
So there's a handful of sites around the country for sectional qualifying, but so I guess there's like a tier system. They have a local qualifying and then a final qualifying, and then there's the U.S. Open. And so I got exempt through local qualifying for finishing quarterfinalist at the U.S. Amateur 2 years ago. So they gave me 2 years of exemptions of not having to do the first stage of the qualifier, which is huge because there's a lot of players in that, and I think they take maybe around 6 to 8 to 10 spots at the local qualifiers that move on to the final qualifying. So I guess skipping one of those steps, it helps out tremendously.
Sure.
When you're trying to qualify for something like that. And so I think this was the third time I had played sectionals since I think I played it 1 year, my sophomore year in college, and then my junior year in high school, the summer headed into my junior year. So I kind of knew what to expect. They've started doing something on Golf Channel called Golf's Longest Day, or the longest day in golf.
Nice.
And they do it from, I think, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So they had someone from Golf Channel out there, and I guess I never really thought about it, but it is truly probably the longest day in golf that we play all year, because I got up at 5:45 and we went and got some breakfast and teed off not too long after 8:30 and played 18 holes, got a 30-minute break, and then played another 18. So
wow. So both rounds are in the same day.
Same day, 36.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it's a lot, but I don't know. I qualified for a few U.S. juniors, and it was the same kind of format, the 36 in one day. And I mean, some people I think kind of have a certain perspective on it, but I like a 36-hole day, especially in an event like that, because if you get out, like I shot 5 under in the morning and played really well. I was 4 under through 5 to start the day. So I feel like when you get on a roll that morning and play well, that you can kind of feed off that momentum in the afternoon, and vice versa. If you don't play as well as you wanted to in the morning, they keep the golf course the same for the afternoon round. So you know where the pins are. It's kind of like it counted, but it's almost like a little practice.
Exactly. Yeah. I was thinking that. Had you played that course before, Spencer? I
had played a U.S. Amateur qualifier back maybe in like 2016 or 17 there, I believe. But I hadn't been there in a couple of years. But it's a really good golf course, and it was playing really firm in the practice round, but we got some rain on Sunday night and during the first round on Monday, which softened up the golf course a little bit, and I think allowed guys to be a little more aggressive and make some birdies.
So this is a question maybe for you and Dr. Mo, because I'd be curious to see if there's a difference of opinion. But as a player, Spencer, do you feel pressure early on to go, hey, I do need to really kind of get out and play well, because I know the importance of playing well and that I can kind of ride that momentum through all 36 holes? Or do you really just take it one hole at a time and just know that you're grinding out for a long day?
I think it's the second one, kind of grinding it out for a long day, because I think you can get really kind of invested in a certain like section of the holes, like on the golf course, or kind of putting yourself, I don't know. I just think that it's a very long day, and it's more, obviously you're tired physically, but I think just mentally, I mean, you can play a single round of golf during a day and you're worn out mentally, much less two. Yeah. So I think just kind of like having that mental perspective. And I think a lot of that comes with the way you prepare and making sure you have enough rest, make sure you're hydrated. Like kind of a lot of, I've learned after playing them throughout the years that there's a lot more off course prep that is key than I actually realized. Sure. So I think each experience that I've played gotten to play whether it's a U.S. Junior qualifier, U.S. Amateur qualifier, U.S. Open sectional qualifier, knowing how long and grueling those days are and how pressure packed they are, especially if you're playing really well later in the day, just how it wears you down mentally and physically. So I think the thing that I've gotten a lot better about is the way I prepare leading into an event like that.
Yeah, taking care of your crap, as Dr. Mo would say.
Hey, listen, that sounded just like Dr. Mo on the last episode. Right. Hydrate, eat, sleep, know what you got to do. That's awesome.
We're right there with you. We're getting the same knowledge. We just don't go out and fire 4 under and 5 under in any rounds that we make, not even combined.
Yeah, the only birdie that I might get is if there's one in the tree when I spray it in the woods.
Right. So what were you speaking? Oh, go ahead.
No, I would say, I think the main thing in a long day like that, if you don't want to get so result oriented, but like you're just waiting basically for other people to kind of shoot themselves out of it. And so not that it's going to play out this way, but like you got to have the mentality like, okay, if I just most of the time, going in, especially at the US Open, right? So a qualifier like that, it's probably going to take it for 36 holes, at least 5 under, but it's not going to take 15 under, right?
Right.
So if you have the mindset, well, all these guys have shot 5, 6, 7 under, even on 1-9 holes. It might be your last 9 where things come together. You just got to hang in there as long as you can. Right. And you're trying to keep yourself in it. Now, I mean, if you go out and you shoot 80 or something the first round, then obviously that, you're not going to make it. But right. I think as long as you're just staying in there, hanging in there, and then like, I'm going to let all these other people kind of whittle themselves out. And, if I'm just a few under through 27 holes, I still got some chance, whatever that chance might be. So
absolutely. No, I think it's exactly right. Go ahead, Spencer.
Well, like one thing I had one of my good friends caddy for me on Monday, who I've gotten to know at college. And, when we got there, it was decent weather, but we were kind of planning on battling some weather that day. And we started warming up, and I think the first tee time was probably 7:30. I think I went at 8:50. And I got there about 7:20, 7:25 to stretch a little bit before I went out and started hitting balls and putting and that sort of stuff. And it started to sprinkle, and it ended up raining the whole time we warmed up. And I remember talking to my caddy, and I was like, this is like, obviously I don't want to play in the rain, but at the same time, you can cancel out, I guess, some of the field, because mentally they're going to be like, well, I don't want to sit here. I don't want to play in the rain.
Yep.
Nobody wants to play in these conditions. This stinks, kind of thing. So I think mentally, like you go in with that mindset of, I'm going to use this as a positive instead of a negative, even though it's not an ideal situation, but you can go on ahead and mentally prepare yourself and know that, hey, I've got some players beat already just because of the mental approach I'm taking.
Well, speaking of that mental approach, we know from talking to Dr. Mo that, that positive mental preparation is so key. And it's one of those things is focus keys, right? It's coming up and having very, what's your controllable actions that you're going to focus on. So what were some of those for you as you were kind of heading into such a big event?
Yeah, I think I was a little, I don't know. I feel like I'm a fairly confident player most of the time, but we had just come off postseason of regionals and nationals where I didn't play my best. I actually played very below average. And I think just mentally I was just kind of struggling almost to like, hey, just with a little bit of confidence here and there. And I played well in the days leading up. And I just found myself I found that the biggest thing when I've played events like this is not wearing myself out too much, because one thing I found out that I would do it physically, I would wear myself out, and that would end up creeping into mentally being physically drained. And so that was one thing like I worked on leading up, was that, hey, I'm going to get in a routine of, I was waking up at 6:30, 7 o'clock, and I would go out there and practice because I knew that I was going to have to be up early. And so I did that the few days prior to when we before we left, and like just picking up on trying to do the little things right, so that on a day like that you can kind of minimize the variables and that sort of thing of what's going on that day. You want to make it as simplistic as possible so that you give 100% focus for what's going on.
So it's all simple until now we're on hole 18, right? I mean, and there's all of a sudden it's like the stakes are really high. So it's real easy to have all of the focal keys and stuff. And I know Dr. Mo would say, look, it's real easy to keep doing it all through 18 holes, but human nature creeps in. So what was your mindset kind of as you're approaching that 18th hole? And tell us about that story. And I understand it's a pretty good one.
Yeah. So so when we finished the morning round, I've typically in the past, I've kind of been a leaderboard watcher. I'll like to know where I'm at, that sort of thing. And starting this spring at an event in Mississippi, I told myself that I wasn't going to look at the leaderboard until sometime on the last day, whether it was sometime in the middle of the front nine or whether we were making the turn in the last round. But I just felt like I'd kind of gotten into a funk of almost looking and being too result oriented, as Dr. Mo was saying. And like after the first round we finished and, I'd be in 10th place. Well, all right. Well, that's in a good position to have a chance to win later that week when you've got 2 more rounds and that sort of thing. So I told myself this spring that I wasn't going to try to leaderboard watch until the end and just try to play my game. And because I knew if I played my own game that I would have a chance and I'd do the things that I need to do, I would have a chance come the end. And so I finished the first round and I shot 5 under, and I knew I had played really well. I didn't know how the scores were going to be because they haven't held U.S. Open sectional qualifying there before. So I didn't know what the scores would be like. And so I told my caddy, he was on his doing the live scoring on the phone for the first round. And I said, hey, I don't know where I'm at. I don't want to know where I'm at all day. Like, I know I'm playing well, but just don't let me know, because if I keep playing the way like I played this first round, then I feel like I'll have a chance come the end of the day. So I ended up birdieing hole 16. I hit a 6-iron to like 10 feet to get to 9 under.
Wow.
And I knew that I had to be close or somewhere in the top 5. And then I bogeyed hole 17, hit a bad chip to get back to 8 under. And so I knew that I would probably need at least a par, but probably a birdie. It was a reachable par 5. And so I hit a really good drive, probably the best drive I hit all day. And I had 255 to the hole, and which is a perfect 3-wood for me. And I was kind of contemplating whether to go for it or not. But also I'd say probably the strength of my game are my wedges. And so, I'd been hitting them well all day, and I was like, I'm going to take some of the variables out here and I'm going to lay it up to a good yardage and give myself a wedge opportunity, because I feel like I can make a birdie just as well from 70 yards as I could hitting it up either on the green and 2-putting or near the green and chipping up and making a putt. So I laid it up to like 73 yards, I was trying to lay it up to 70. So I gave myself a good look at it, and I just hit a terrible wedge shot, one that was very uncharacteristic, and one that you're like, oh man, what? Like, how did I just do that in that situation?
I should have gone for it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
stupid 3-wood.
Could have gone for it and chipped it, and hit a bad chip and hit it closer than that.
Yeah.
So I was kind of kicking myself there, but I knew that I had the same putt in the first round, but I was about 15 feet the first round for birdie. And then I was about 35 feet the second round for birdie, but I was on the same angle, and I missed it low, and I hit it too hard the first time. So I knew it was quick, and I knew it was breaking a lot. It broke like 4 or 5 feet.
Oh, wow.
So, and I told my caddy, I was like, if I get the speed correctly, I think I've got the read down to where this will give myself a chance. And if not, I'll tap it in. We'll see where we are. And I ended up I hit a great putt, and it was tracking to end up going in. And my caddy he hadn't looked at the leaderboard all day, and he had looked at it when we were walking up to the green. And so he knew I needed a birdie, but he didn't tell me.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because if not, I would have been in a playoff for the last 2 spots and the 2 alternate spots. And so he knew I needed a birdie, but I'm glad he didn't tell me. That's not something I wanted to hear right there.
He's just going crazy after you make it. And you're like, what? Okay.
He's jumping up and down and giving me a hug. And he's like, that was huge. He's like, I think you're going to avoid a playoff. And I was like, so you think we're in? He's like, I think we're in. So then went up and it was one of those times where you get a scoring tent and you quadruple check the scorecard.
Right. Yes. Oh, yeah.
There's no possible way the scorecard can be wrong. So I was kind of skeptical to hand it to her, but I ended up, and she's like, everything matches up. I've got this, and that's a 68. And I was like, I believe so. I think that's right. She's like, good playing. And then went and pulled out my phone out of my bag and saw where looked like I was going to make it. And I had some of the Georgia alumni who were playing there. And one of them was my teammate, Grayson Sigg, who finished at 9 under and was
qualified as well. Yeah.
And nice. Gave me a big old hug, and we were sitting there kind of laughing and joking around. So it was a nice couple 20 minutes right there, but signing that scorecard was probably the most nervous I was all day.
That's brutal handing that over.
I was trying to write my name kind of in.
Well, Dr. Mo, it sounds like he's, there as he's kind of explaining that last approach and just kind of mindset going into that final 9 or the final 18, really. It's all the things you would want him to be thinking, right? I mean, it's also a little bit of that invite the challenge as well there towards the end. I mean, you those are the things that you want to lean into.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, definitely. I mean, Spencer's played a lot of high caliber golf, and so he knows, through trial and error, kind of where he needs to be for his game in those pressure situations, what's going to work best, and so, yeah. And I mean, the biggest thing was like, it would be real easy to say, I'm not going to look at the leaderboard, but then like change that, like when you're on 16 or 17 after you make that bogey. And I don't think that's, you have to go that way or you have to go the other way, but it's just important, whichever way you decide, hey, this is what I'm going to do, that you commit to, and you don't change it just when the situation gets a little hairy, like it did there on 17. And I was glad that his caddy, and I don't know his caddy, I was glad that his caddy basically had the wherewithal to stick to what they had talked about, because it'd be real easy to get up there on 18 green and be like, I know you said this, you need to make the putt.
This is kind of a big putt. Make sure you read it right.
What a 3 putt it is.
So Spencer, as soon as
and you're like, I might miss the playoff.
Yeah. That's right.
So Spencer, how soon after you hit it did you know it was going in? I mean, did you walk it down?
Yeah. So right as I hit it and I looked up, I mean, it started out on the line and it felt like when it came off, it felt like I had good speed on it. And I was like, all right. It was one of those putts that just sits there and you're like, all right, is this ever going to get to the hole? Is it ever going to get to the hole? And it went in with perfect speed. It was kind of dying in. And I would have tapped it in if it didn't go in. So I was just waiting on it to get to the hole and get to the hole and get to the hole. And so once it finally was getting closer and it was coming in at an angle, it was coming in at probably 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. It looked like it was going to come in. I'm like, this might have a chance.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I left the flag stick in and it kind of hit the side of the flag stick and went in.
That's awesome.
He was jumping up and down. And
so is that your favorite course right now that you've ever played?
The 18th hole is.
Yeah, exactly. You own that 18th hole. Hey, we've talked over the course of these conversations with Dr. Mo about, and Brandon and I talk a lot about this on the podcast in general, is just the importance of habits and routines. Are there certain routines that you kind of have out there, both either prior to the rounds and then during the rounds, that you would consider to be something that you're more consistent with than other things?
I would say my warm-up routine has gotten very consistent in that I get to, whether it's the golf course, like I try to get somewhere where I can stretch for 15 to 20 minutes before I go out and start getting in my routine of putting and chipping and stuff. And then I warm up for an hour. So typically I like to get to the golf course about an hour and a half early before my tee time, because I've got to be on the tee 10 minutes early. Mm-hmm. So then that gives me an hour and 20 minutes to stretch for 15, walk around for 5 here and there, and have an hour solid of what I start out is I do some fundamentals putting, start out, and then I run through some kind of drills, some like tee drills and that sort of stuff to check fundamentals. And then I'll go hit balls, and then I chip. And then when I come back and putt, I hit only lag putts until about 2 minutes before I walk to the tee, I'll only hit short putts. But I'm trying to dial. First, when I get there, I try to make sure all my fundamentals are good. So then when I come back, I can dial in the speed of the greens right before I go off. And then I want to see the ball go in the hole right before I go off, so that I get that kind of image in my mind that, hey, the ball's going in the hole, you're making a lot of putts. It can be from 2.5 feet, 3 feet, 4 feet. I just want to see the ball go in the hole a lot instead of hitting a bunch of 10 to 12 footers right before I go off. And, I may have left the face open there. And then you get on the first hole and it's, all right, I left the face open on that one. I'm going to have to do this on this first putt of the day. Yeah. So I think that's been big. But I think the part where I've improved the most since kind of seeing Dr. Mo's, I kind of got into bad habits of I wasn't eating great. I wasn't working out. I'd kind of gotten a little big for my liking. And I think it showed when I would play summer tournaments, and I would go on a stretch of 2 to 3 weeks of being on the road, going from tournament to airport, and not coming home. And I would get to that end of the second week, third week, and I would just be so physically drained. And that way I couldn't compete that third week at a very high level. So I came back and kind of made some changes over the past few years of just eating better, trying to be more healthy, take care of myself a little bit better, because I knew that 3 years ago, if I kept on going down that road and I wanted to play professional golf for a living, you got to be able to play more than 2 weeks in a row to excel at that level. And
especially early in your career.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think like learning how to take care of myself and make sure there's certain weeks you're just not going to have as much in the tank as other weeks if you play a lot of weeks in a row or this and that. And I think just trying to figure out the best way to excel each week that I can.
Right.
Doing that. And then just finding, I think me and Dr. Mo talked about it a long time ago, of finding something that you can do off of the golf course. Because I had trouble when I would go to these events. I would be up in the Northeast for 3 weeks, and I would stay with host families. And I would be taking some classes online during the summer, but I wouldn't really know. I would get off the golf course, and it's not like I could come home or go hang out with friends. I didn't know there was nothing that once I got done with the golf course for the day, it was like, all right, well,
now what?
Where do you flip the switch?
Yeah.
Because I'm one that likes to, when I'm on the golf course, I'm all golf. But when I'm off the golf course, I like to get away from the game. And
it's so important.
I've kind of found myself in like getting into some certain shows or movies or that sort of thing, because I enjoy watching movies. So doing that on the road or finding a show or a series that I like, of being able to like, all right, I'm done for the day. I want to go home and I want to go watch 3 episodes of this show, because I can totally flip the switch off and go take care of that. And then I can go eat dinner and I can reset and get ready for the next day to be prepared. So I think just learning how you can best prepare and to excel at a high level week in, week out has been the biggest thing that I've like picked up on in the past few years.
No, that's fantastic.
So Spencer, I know we only have you for a few more minutes, but what's the best show that what are you going to watch leading into next week that's going to help you kind of reset? What's out there that I should be tuning into?
I'm not sure. I actually was a little bit behind, but I just finished Yellowstone.
Okay. That's awesome.
I love it. I didn't think I would like it after watching the preview and that sort of stuff, but I ended up loving it. And I got hooked. I mean, it kind of put a dent in my my credit card, because I bought it on Amazon Prime.
Nice, yeah, that'll do it.
Went in the hole, but it was well worth it.
Yeah. So let me ask you this question, and I'm going to frame it just this way. So what are you most excited about as you prepare to go to Torrey Pines and play? And you notice, Dr. Mo, I didn't say the U.S. Open. I said Torrey Pines. Because
there you go. You're learning.
I'm learning. So what do you know about that course?
I don't know much at all. And the funny thing is, so I qualified on Monday. We got done late at night, and it was dark. We ended up trying to go to 3 restaurants. By the time we had gotten back, 10 o'clock, all of them were closed. We ended up eating a celebratory dinner at Waffle House.
And that's good stuff, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, I've had many celebratory dinners at Waffle House.
There's a lot of celebrating I've had at Waffle House.
And then yesterday, so Tuesday, I slept in. I was exhausted and got to play one of my favorite courses in the world, Peachtree Golf Club in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And just always a blast to play that. And so we played that all afternoon, and I didn't have my phone on me. I left it in the car. We got done about 7 o'clock. So I've got a million text messages and phone calls and all kind of stuff from the past few days, and I haven't been able to look at my phone. And I drove down here all day today. So I've just been trying to catch up with people, but I think I don't know. I got to play in the Heritage 2 years ago.
Oh, good.
The PGA Tour event, and didn't play my best, but ended up missing the cut by 1. So I think that gave me a lot of confidence to, hey, you can go out here and compete with these guys, even with not your best stuff. And so I think I'm most looking forward to next week, having another opportunity to do that, because after next week I'm turning professional, and obviously that's the level and the play that I want to be at for my career. So having that opportunity to go out there and play with those guys and hopefully play out there for a long time and soon. So I think just having another opportunity, because I feel like my game's improved a lot over the past year and a half since I played. I guess it's been a year now since I played that event.
Heritage, yeah.
And to kind of have another opportunity to go and kind of prove myself that, hey, you've got the game to go compete. And I've got the confidence now after qualifying on Monday with a bunch of highly ranked amateurs and players in the Korn Ferry Tour, mini tours, and even PGA Tour players that were there at that qualifier, and going out there and playing well and qualifying and get one of those spots. So, I don't know a lot about the golf course. I think I'll do more of that tomorrow when I get back home and kind of sit down and be able to do a little bit of research. But I've learned the most once we get there on Monday.
Yeah.
It's a step foot on the golf course and figuring out kind of where I can, because obviously everybody's a very good player, but we all play the game very differently. So the way I play the game is a lot different than the way Bryson DeChambeau or somebody like that plays the game. So
absolutely,
kind of breaking down a golf course and figuring out what's the best way that you can excel at that golf course. Because as you can see on the PGA Tour, you've got a million different guys who either hit it short, have really good short games, hit it long, putt really well. There's a good combination of players that do things differently, and they all succeed at a very high level. So I think I'm most looking forward to go competing with those guys. And I like the challenge of kind of going to a new golf course and having to think your way around, having enough practice rounds to kind of break down how can I best attack this golf course this week.
That's awesome.
That. Yeah, I love that. Knowing what your strengths are and putting yourself into a position to succeed. So, hey, listen, when you come back and you're in Gainesville, you're right. I'm right there. I'll take you to probably the fanciest place there in Gainesville is maybe Cheddar's. So I'll take care of you when you come home.
I thought you were going to go smothered and covered at Waffle House.
Hey, listen, they got a really cool mellow mushroom in Gainesville. There's a Wild Wing. I'll let him pick.
That's it. Now that he's not an amateur, you could do that.
Right.
You wouldn't have been able to do that a month or two ago. That would have been a violation.
That is true.
Yeah.
Hey, so while we're on that, just a real quick food story for you. So I was over at Congaree Monday night, some of the caddies, and there's nowhere to stay around Congaree. We're having the tour event this week. So some of the caddies, they didn't get back, and there was this one diner down around Ridgeland closed. There's only a Wendy's, and they're like, no, let's don't do that. So they go to the Waffle House. There's a Waffle House at exit 22 on 95 near Ridgeland. They go to the Waffle House, and the sign said, "Sorry, closed. Don't have staff to be open all the time. We'll reopen at 10 p.m."
Oh, okay.
So they know their clientele. They were going to open back up from 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock in the morning.
So, hey, Mo, so to tell you, like, because I know at one point in time, FEMA actually used Waffle House as a gauge when, like, a natural disaster hit. When the Waffle House kind of opened back up, folks were things were kind of getting back on track. I have a Waffle House that it's actually kind of funny. The place that I work out, there's a Subway right next to it. Okay. There's a Waffle House right here, and there's a Papa John's right behind it. And I can't tell you how many times, and I've never seen it, but that Waffle House closes all the time from about 5:30 at night until about 9:30 at night, and it magically wakes up so that it can operate from 10 until 2 in the morning, and then they'll close back down. It's crazy.
Yeah. It's a good place for people who are wrapping up a night of festivities, or if you've just qualified for the U.S. Open. I mean, I think that's on their ads. They have a coupon. If you just qualified for the U.S. Open, it's buy one get one. That's awesome.
You get a free Burt's chili. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. Well, we're happy for you. I just love the fact that you were just worked out that you were going to be around there today and could jump on with us, because, we talk about this all the time. Is we talk a lot about theories and systems and strategies and stuff on this show, but when we can get that application piece of it, and you definitely, I mean, just in the way, as Brandon was saying earlier, just in the way that you answered some of those questions, you can hear that Dr. Mo influence on your thinking. And I think if you continue to have that, same mindset as you go into the old or Torrey Pines next week. I almost caught myself. That's right. Torrey Pines next week. And, just like you did the last time, tell your caddy to keep his mouth shut. Don't look up until you're already there. One of my favorite, Ward Burton, race car driver. There's a great interview years ago. He had won some race. And at the end of the race, they asked him, what was the keys to winning? And he said, I just kept driving till everybody quit. And I thought that was just such a great, it's just such a simple, just keep on driving till everybody quit. So you'll be just fine out there, man. But we're going to be pulling for you. You're our golfer to pull for when you get out to California.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it. Nice to meet y'all, and thank y'all for having me on. That was fun.
Absolutely, absolutely. So well, Mo, we've got some. Speaking of courses and majors, I mean, this Grand Slam collection and this Grand Slam series of podcasts, the 4 that we've been doing, has really got a lot of good feedback. The first one we did around the Masters, of course, was that prep and practice. And then we also talked about leading into the last major, which is the PGA Championship, all of the off the course things. And we just talked a little bit to Spencer about that, like, taking care of your crap things, making sure you're sleeping and hydrating, managing the negative. This one we're going to really start to dive into, and I've really been looking forward to this is going to be 2 parts. So we'll talk about this leading up to the U.S. Open, of course, at Torrey Pines in San Diego, as show 3, but then also for show 4, we'll cover the rest of on the course. But this is where it all comes together, right? I mean, this is where all of the things that you've done from a practice and preparation standpoint and off the course, now you have to go out there and execute, and you have to go play. So talk to us a little bit about, maybe that now that you're there, it's the 10 to 20 hours, as you like to say, between the ropes during a tournament, and what's going on there.
Right. Well, the thing that is so simplistic about golf that makes it maybe easy for me to help players learn and teach and that sort of thing is, whereas in other sports, I mean, there's a lot of different skills that might be equally balanced. And in golf, obviously you have a lot of clubs, but it's very easy in the sense of everything that you've done that Spencer was talking about off the course, everything you've done in your practice and prep, it's going to really be highlighted in these kind of quick 2-second burst over the ball. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know, and maybe even if we back it up to, 8 seconds for your routine when you're walking in. And we'll start talking here about kind of the process that I teach guys. But if you cannot manage that 8 to 10 seconds and you don't know what you want to think, and especially when you get under pressure, then you will literally give away those 20 hours worth of work. And so, like, even when I talk with other kind of corporate teams, and there might be different skills and that different divisions in the company need to be great at. In golf, it's very simple. You have to be great at managing your mind for 8 to 10 seconds over the ball. And if that skill cannot be mastered, you're never going to reach your full potential. You might do a lot of other good things, but it's so clear cut that is one of the key things you just have to be great at in golf. And so everything that we're doing from a practice standpoint and putting people under pressure, everything we're doing from sleep and hydration, everything we're doing from your routines is going to be exposed in that 8 to 10 seconds. And so in that sense, it's really nice because it's pretty much very simple in golf as to if somebody's struggling, the first place I would look is right there.
Yeah.
Especially if they can play well, when they're not under pressure, or if they can play well when it's not a competitive situation. It's real simple to be like, okay, well, hey, I know where we got to start. It's not like you're some medical doctor and they've got some, mysterious illness and you got to run a bunch of tests. It's very cut and dried. Do you know what you need to be thinking over the ball? And can you explain that to me in great detail with no uncertainty? Because if you can't do that, then you're not at the highest level.
Sure.
Yeah.
And as you say, ultimately, that's what you're going to be judged for. I mean, especially as a professional. I mean, that's execution is it. I mean, it's why, like you talk about, that aspect requires the most attention. Because right. that's the scorecard at the end. I mean, literally the scorecard at the end of the day. And you talk about this system of one shot at a time and how it's that consistency of thinking. Talk a little bit about that one shot at a time mentality.
Right. Well, this would be years ago, back when I was even in graduate school, and I had played golf growing up, but we kind of all heard the phrase one shot at a time. But if you ask someone, okay, well, so yeah, I agree with that. How do you do that? They'd say, well, you just focus on the shot at hand. Okay, well, so how do I do that? Well, don't think ahead and don't think behind. Okay, so how do I do that? And you just end up in this vicious circle of saying the same thing over and over without saying anything, really.
Yeah.
So to put some tangible actions to that, I was literally at a conference, and like a lot of good thinking, you steal from other people that you hear stuff. And there was a guy in baseball, and I was in grad school, and he was talking about working with these pitchers. And basically he was getting them, I can't remember the whole thing, but it was refocus and then react and maybe then relax in between pitches. And so it was like a 3-part. And I'm
right.
like, I know this can apply to golf because it's the same. It's one skill. It's repetitive. It's, and he was specifically talking about the pitcher, not so much the batter, but the pitcher. Yeah. And so I just started thinking, okay, I know this can apply to golf, and messed around with it. And so I basically came up with, what I have called my 4R system, if you want to call it that. But basically the first thing you would need to do for any golf shot is simply make a decision. And so the term that I use for that is refocusing. And I got to refocus on this shot, figure out what I need to do. Every shot, to me, and how I teach students, is like a math problem, right? Because math problems are separate. The first math problem on a test is literally different than the 7th math problem. They're unemotional, and then they're different in difficulty. And so that's the way I would want a student to treat a golf shot is, okay, well, this could be a 4-footer on my home course. It could be a 50-footer over a ridge on a golf course. So what I'm doing in my refocusing, in my decision-making, doesn't have to be the same. But then from there, it transitions into this other part around the ball, which we call your routine, pre-shot routine, that a lot of people have heard of. And your pre-shot routine, the way I describe it, is like brushing your teeth. And because you're going to brush your teeth the same way, whether you're in Gainesville, Georgia, or Austin, Texas, or San Diego, California, or Beijing, China, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you just got an email or you just got in a fight with your wife or you're watching a Snapchat or you got the Golf Channel on. Like, this is what I do because I have a toothbrush and a sink. Mm-hmm. And I think that you can do that with a putter or a 9-iron. Like, okay, it's 148 yards. The wind's in and off the right. It doesn't matter if there's no one watching, 200 people watching, 2 million people watching. This is what I do with a 9-iron in my hand. Mm-hmm. In terms of, when I'm going to walk in for the last 8 seconds. And so like I got Hugh with me here today, and he's just learning this, but understanding the difference between those two and why you need to separate those and not combine them. Because if you're making a decision while you're trying to execute your routine, it's just a matter of time before that system breaks down.
Yep.
Right. So that's really where I start, pretty much with every player. And it doesn't matter so much for me. Like, their personality is important in terms of how I want to communicate with them. Their personality is not important in terms of, like, this is a must-have. We have got to nail down these routines. And it doesn't mean that Hugh's putting routine needs to be anything like Zach Johnson's, but it does mean we got to figure out what you're going to do in terms of how you're going to walk into the ball, how you're going to set up, what are you going to be thinking, where your eyes going to go, because everything in golf is going to go through your eyes into your brain, and then your brain's going to tell your body what to do. Mm-hmm. So if your visual routine is not consistent, and we don't have consistent visual input, we're not going to get consistent physical output from your hands and your body.
Yeah.
And so just getting players to really understand that, because at the end of the day, if you have a great routine, then when you get under pressure, you can rely on that. Because the one thing that they all know, especially when I start talking about it, is, look, your sensations, your feels, your timing, all those things are going to leave you. Like, those are like half-hearted friends. Your routine is like your best friend on the golf course, because it won't leave you and you can trust it, because those other things are not necessarily, they can't be counted on to be there all the time.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's the way we talk about it.
I liked, I saw an interview you did on YouTube, probably, I don't know, it's probably been a while ago. It looked like, just from the footage and stuff.
I look nicer and younger. You can go ahead and say that.
Well, we're roughly the same age, so I don't know if I'll go down that road. But one of the things I've used this in working some of the teams and players I've worked with that I really loved is, because you just reminded me of this, talking about being machine-like, is what happens when, and you use this analogy of a computer, is you're putting information in, you're doing this, it's a routine. If a computer doesn't think of anything else, you put the code in or whatever, and it just executes that code until it doesn't. And when it like maybe has a little bit of a misstep, or it gets a little bit off of kilter or whatever. And what do you do in that situation? Is you reset the computer. And that was, I thought, was a really good analogy. And we've talked about reset breaths and things like that. Is when I think about those first 2 hours of refocus and routine, is being able to have that self-awareness as a golfer out on the course and recognize, hey, I'm a little bit off kilter here. Maybe it's not running as just data in, data out like it should be from a computer standpoint, to keep that analogy going. And now I need to reset myself.
Right. And if you have a very good understanding of what you're doing around the ball, then it makes it easy to know where to go when you need that reset. So, and to keep it simple, what I try to tell players is there's basically only 2 ways you're going to get messed up over the ball. You're either going to get distracted. So that could be an internal distraction of a different thought popping into your head. What am I having for dinner? Or it could be an external distraction because there's an ambulance going down the road. And both of them gain your awareness to the point where, okay, I know I need to back off. It didn't change my answer to the math problem.
Right.
I still want to hit the same shot the same way. I don't have any problem with that. I just got distracted. So if I just get distracted, all I have to do is go back and restart my routine. The other situation that would happen is you have doubt. So now I'm over the ball and I'm getting ready to, walk in. Close that door. I'm getting ready to walk in, and now I don't trust the line that I picked. Mm-hmm. So now I have doubt. Well, if I have doubt, now I'm going to go back into the math problem, and I may need to look at this putt again and walk around the other side, right? But so a lot of people just know I'm uncomfortable over the ball, but they can't really say, well, is that uncomfortable, ability, if that's a word, just not being comfortable. If that happens, am I just distracted or do I have doubt? And if I know which one, then I know how far I need to, go back to.
So Dr. Mo, so when you talk about that, I mean, and one of the things that you mentioned in the last podcast was having to have your player be committed. Once you've decided what you're going to do, let's commit to it. Right, wrong, or indifferent.
Yep.
There's a commitment level. When you're talking about the 4 R's, there it seems to me like there may be some variability there in that, Spencer's routine may be different than Hugh's routine, right?
Yep.
In terms of there may be a waggle, there may be a breath, whatever it is, but there are some commonalities there that you're going to have them all do at some point. Is that kind of what we're talking about?
Yeah. So, they would have complete freedom to do whatever they need to do to figure out the math problem. Mm-hmm. So, and that is not part of their routine. And then once they start in their routine, the way we would describe it is I want each component of their routine. You have a physical component. That's what you can do. So let's just take an example of a putt, a 6-foot putt. Okay. You're walking in to hit a 6-foot putt. So what we can see someone do on TV, at the U.S. Open would be their physical routine, right? They're going to walk in. If we're watching Zach Johnson, he's going to take one putting stroke looking down, one putting stroke looking up, step over, first look, second look, ball's gone. That's his physical routine. Mm-hmm. His visual routine, which is the second component, is where do his eyes go as he's going through that physical process? Are they tracking the ball? Are they visualizing the path? Is he just looking at a spot? And that can be different for player to player. One player might be a spot putter and another one might be a path. That's fine. But for themselves, within that routine, they can't be changing that.
Yeah.
Because like a spot is a starting point, a path is an end point. You can't give your brain endpoints at certain times and starting points at others because your vision is changing, because it's going to basically crash the computer, right? To use that.
Yeah.
And then your mental routine is, as I'm going through this physical routine, what am I doing to occupy my mind to keep out the other junk that is really trying to get in there from an emotional side? And the easiest way to kind of think, I do not believe that you can go blank over the ball, especially for, let's say the last 3 to 4 seconds. You might be able to go blank for just a brief period, but you're not going to go blank, especially for 8 seconds while you're walking in.
Right.
The human brain just can process so much information so fast. And so if I had a pill, that I could make players go blank, I wouldn't be on this with y'all. I'd be a gazillionaire and I'd be on my island somewhere in the Caribbean. So
we'd still hunt you down.
There you go.
So you can't go blank over the ball. It's a matter of how do I want to manage my mind over the ball so that I make sure that I really have choreographed my thinking so that I know what's getting ready to happen. And then at the end, I'm allowing myself to just be free through impact. Because that's the whole goal for any routine, is to allow you freedom through impact. And I may have mentioned this earlier here, but when Bryson was doing this interview a couple months ago, they were asking him, he was getting ready to go practice. It was around TPC or Bay Hill. And they said, well, what are you going to go practice? He said, well, I'm going to go practice what I always practice. I'm practicing the absence of tension through impact. That's all I'm trying to do. And that is so good in terms of just a concept of, if you can be free for that half a second or quarter of a second through impact, your work is going to show up. Yeah. And if you can't do that, you can literally waste these 20 to 30 hours that we're putting in.
Well, You talked about, as you talk about that letting go emotionally so the machine can run smoothly, all that. You've said, 99% of players, that emotion's fear, right? I mean, that's something that's a really big, that will start to filter in, and it's trying to manage that fear. And it could manifest itself in a lot of different ways about a lot of different things. Yeah.
And that fear could be, it could just be internal fear of not, wanting to miss that putt and go to 2 over. It could be fear because there's something associated with that putt of missing the cut and then I'm not going to be able to pay a bill or something like that. It could be fear of letting my team down. They've helped me out so much and I'm going to let them down. I mean, there's all types of outlets that can kind of lead into this fear, if you will. And so it can be helpful to understand those, but no matter where it is coming from, the one thing you need to understand is, okay, I have to figure out a system that gives me the best chance of emotionally getting rid of that and will allow me to swing freely through impact. That's what I'm trying to do. Yeah. So for most people, right, if you have a fearful thought, right, I mean, some of this is kind of almost straight psychology, but I don't know. I don't know much about straight psychology, but it's very hard to have a negative thought and a grateful thought at the same time. Right. Yep. So it's very hard to have a fearful thought if you're having a specific positive thought about what you're trying to do. One of the, again, potentially, something in my swing. So if we go back to this putt, and I'll just kind of give you I think one of the clearest examples. So I worked with Nick Watney for years, and Nick Watney decided that the best way for him to occupy his mind was to make each action correlate with a number, because he likes numbers and he was counting. So he would literally, for a putt, he would walk in, he'd put the putter in and say to himself, 1. He would separate his feet and take his stance, 2. He'd look at the hole, 3, come back to the ball, 4. His backstroke would be 5 and his through stroke would be 6. Okay. So literally he's counting the 6 on every putt he hits, whether it's 3 feet or 50 feet, or anywhere in between. And so if we could magically cut open his brain, if we're supposed to see 1, we would never see 3. If we're supposed to see 2, it's never going to be blank. It's very choreographed what's getting ready to come down the mental pipeline that is churning through his brain. Now, you don't have to be a counter, because like myself, if I count when I putt, my speed control is terrible. So that would not work for me. But I do need to have this same sort of mental choreography going through my brain so that I don't leave it up to chance what might jump in there. And at the very last minute, I think, don't pull it left like you did 2 holes ago. Right. That will happen. Right. So that's a lot of what I think I help players understand. Even players at the highest levels, elite players, have heard so much about routines over the years that most of them have, decent to very good physical routines, but a lot of them are missing the other 2 components, the visual and the mental, or they haven't thought about them enough to make sure that not only are they consistent, but that they're also productive. Right. So consistent means I do the same thing every time. Productive means what I'm doing is actually helpful for the shot. So like I was explaining to Hugh today, we're working on his routines and just getting started and that sort of thing. And as he would walk in and hit some of these chip shots, just getting ready, right? He was taking practice swings and we weren't that far off the green, but without paying attention, he's into the shot. His vision's pretty good, right? But his practice swings were, finishing waist high to rib cage high, and when he hit the real shot, it was finishing below his knee, right? So he's taking practice swings that make him feel comfortable. They're not productive for the shot that he's getting ready to hit. Yep, right. Makes sense. So that was just an awareness that he needed to gather so that now he can go practice it and make those more realistic and set him up better. And you have to do it. I believe you have to do that across all 3 components: physical, visual, and mental.
That mental part you just talked about there when you were talking about negative thoughts and grateful thoughts, that's one of those choices I think a lot of times as athletes, as people we have is I can choose to look at a negative situation or I can choose to look at the positive in it. It reminded me, I heard an interview not too long ago with Tony Finau from the tour, and it would have been some tournament. I don't know if it was this year or when it was he was referencing, but he had blown a lead and was now in a playoff situation. And he talked about, I don't know who he's working with from the mental aspect, but he was talking about the difference in him now is that in the past, he would have been so frustrated with himself for blowing the lead. But this time around, he chose to look at it as, wow, what a great opportunity I still have in front of me. And this, I get a chance to go play in a playoff and I get a chance to still win this tournament or whatever. But it was that mental cue, that mental decision he was making to say, I could look at it this way and be so, but that probably would have affected him in the playoffs versus coming at it from that grateful thought. Right.
And so, I mean, I think it's very important in a big picture perspective, just like you were referencing there in terms of kind of the 72nd hole of the tournament is over. Now we're headed to a playoff. If you'd have told me at the beginning of the week I'd be in a playoff, I'd be grateful. But since I don't know what happened, let's just say you putted the last hole, you're looking at it differently or whatever, right? But it also goes right down into the very specific details of if you're over a shot and you don't have a good mental routine about something that you can control and you want to focus on. So Zach Johnson trying to think about hitting a quality putt, right? If you leave that blank and the thought of don't miss it left comes in my simplistic thinking, you have now reduced your chances of making that putt down to at least 33%. Because when you say a don't miss it left, then you're not going to miss it left, hopefully, right? Then you didn't hear the don't, so you miss it left. Yep. Or your brain says, okay, well, so missing it way right is completely acceptable. That's right. Because anytime it's a negative, it's too generally phrased, right? It leaves open the other bad option. So I didn't hear the don't miss it left. I miss it left. I did hear that, so I miss it right. So now I got a 33% chance of actually making this putt. If you could think nothing, but you really can't, you would at least have a 50-50 chance.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important, even in the very specific, mental routines that are going on over each shot, to focus on, okay, hey, I want to be slow and swing left, or I want to take this back high and then soft, whatever it's going to be, So like Hugh in his long game today, he gets a little quick off the ball, right? And then he stands up out of his posture. And so he needs to be thinking just slow takeaway and stay down. Slow takeaway and stay down, right? That's a lot different in terms of the way your brain takes in that information and relays it to your body versus him saying, okay, don't go too fast and stand up.
Yeah.
That literally leaves open so many other variables, right, that are not going to be productive. So you have to basically kind of think through, okay, how am I going to do this? And I mean, we could spend literally hours talking about this because for most of my guys, if we're talking about a putt, and this goes to Brandon's point earlier, at the end of a pre-shot routine, most people are going to get down to the point where they're to some degree settled over the ball, if you will. They're going to take their last look and then they're going to come back and their head's going to be over the ball for, half second or so before the club moves. Right. Well, you can have your last kind of conscious occupying thought either while you're looking out. So I have some guys that would look out at their target and they would literally in a putt, they'd say, okay, right there. They'd come back and then they'd go. So their last conscious thought was right there while they were looking out. I have other guys like Zach. He wouldn't do that. He would just look out. And then when he's over the ball, he'd think quality putt, and then he would go. And then myself, I wouldn't do that. I would look out. I'd track the ball going into the hole. I'd come back. And then during the stroke, I would think smooth, right? And then you have Nick Watney, who's a counter,
right?
Who he would fill up each one of those with a number, right? Yep. So, but when you get down to that very last 1.5 seconds, that's the part that needs to be extremely consistent. Mm-hmm. And then we got to figure out, okay, are you going to be a counter? Are you going to use a tempo thought like Mo, smooth? Are you going to use a target thought right there, like another guy? Are you going to use a process thought, quality putt, like Zach? I mean, and so you get into these different nuances of, okay, where do we want to go? And that's why, like with Hugh today, I mean, it took us probably 3 hours to go through his 3 routines.
Wow.
Right. And what we came up with in 3 hours, because we got him on video for him, every bit of that is, less than 45 seconds total.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Right. So it's that kind of thing. And that part excites me. I mean, I could sit there and talk about that because, like, especially when I get with a new player, I want to know, okay, I know you probably come in here because you're struggling with X, you're driving or whatever it might be, or, especially if it's something on the course. I want to look at what they're doing good first. Tell me about the best part of your game. Tell me what you're thinking. Tell me where your eyes go. Because we might be able to take something that you're doing there that you're not even aware of and transfer that to what you would be doing, in other parts of your game, and kind of build off this one routine that's really good and then make these other ones better.
So it sounds like that if I'm understanding you correctly, that it needs to be simple enough that you can, it's that routine needs to be simple enough, but yet complex enough that you have to think about it a little bit, right? So that it will allow you, because it's hard to focus on 2 things at one time. So as you're thinking about that routine and all of the steps that you have to go through, that also by doing that blocks out some of those uncontrollables and all of the other things, that emotion that comes into it.
And that's generally what happens. I mean, yes, we have to make it simple enough that we can repeat it, but we have to go through the kind of messy process of figuring out what's going to work for you. So, like, when I get with a student, the first thing we do is just warm up, and then we go play, 3, 4, 5 holes. And I just say, hey, I don't care anything about score, but I want you to play how you would normally play if you were in a tournament. And I want to see what they do. And they normally play pretty good because most of the athletes I'm dealing with are good for their level. And so they're going to shoot, a couple under, even 1 over. And then I need that baseline so I can see, because I know as soon as I start introducing the mental routine and the visual routine, it's going to bog down to where now they're thinking about their thinking. Right. That term metacognition, thinking about your thinking, is literally what happens to them, and they're not going to perform as well. And that's literally one of the mistakes I made early on. Looking back on it, is I would get into teaching kind of right out of the gate, and I didn't get a better handle of, okay, what does this person play like? So I didn't have a realistic assessment of what they really did. So now I always go play just to start out, see what they're doing. But even for a tour player, if I were with a tour player, and this has happened, we don't go then play 18 holes, but if we're working on their routines and spending the time, a few hours to get that, and then we were to go, none of them, not a single one, would break 75.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Paralysis by analysis.
Exactly. They're just so bogged down. And then what then I have to talk to them about is, okay, hey, you got to remember where you were. This is going to come back. We got to work through this. And it's basically a matter of putting in the time, especially with the physical routines, right, to make that, more, again, simple. That part can become a little bit like a ritual where you're going through it and you don't have to think so much. But I want them to be very cognitively aware of where they're looking and what thoughts are getting ready to go through their mind. So that's kind of the steps. We got to build the physical routine first, because if you think about it, when you get down to the end, if you turn your head, if you're getting ready to hit a putt and you turn your head once at the end, one time, and 3 times another time, Okay. Well, that's not going to work because we've already choreographed what's getting ready. And if you think about Nick Watney and the way he did it, well, that count to 6 was based on one look. If he takes 2 or 3 looks, right, that count is not going to work.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's that repetition too, being able to do it over and over and over, because I love the analogy you just said earlier about brushing your teeth. Because when you said that, I was thinking, yeah, you know what? You're right. Like, it's something I've done forever. If I get in an argument with somebody, or if something happens to me, I don't brush my teeth harder. I don't do anything different about my routine. I just brush my teeth the same way I do.
Almost every student I have, I ask them when we're sitting and we're, it's semi-serious at first, and they're kind of feeling me out. And I just said, hey, I got a quick question for you. When was the last time you got emotional brushing your teeth? And they're like, okay, I'm paying you how much for this?
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Hugh's right there rolling his eyes going, oh.
Yeah. Oh, he already left. He's like, I've heard enough. I'm out of here.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, so you're going through this routine because at the end of it, what we want this last 1.5 to 2 seconds where I'm over the ball. I can take this last look, come back, and then swing, know what's getting ready to go through. And that part can be extremely consistent. Mm-hmm. And you just, it's like, I can't play golf without doing that.
Yeah.
Right? A great story that I share with a lot of kids is Nick Watney. One of the first times when he became friends with Jason Day, they were playing and they had a couple other amateurs out with them, and they're playing in Vegas, and it's just a casual round, and they're like on the 4th hole, and they got the music going, and they're having fun and whatever, and Jason is standing back behind the ball and kind of closing his eyes and doing his thing and walking in, and Watney's like, hey, this is just like a casual round, we're just playing with my buddies. It's pretty fun. And Jason's like, well, yeah, but like if we're playing golf, I can't play golf any other way. Like I don't know how to play another way. Right. So it was a great lesson, like an aha moment. Like, well, if we're playing golf, we can still do all this other stuff.
Right.
But this part is so conditioned in me. I don't know how to play golf any other way.
I love that.
We want to get that routine at the very end to be like, this is just what I do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. I love that because it's so true. Nothing should change. Just like, you would say to Spencer going into the Open next year or next week, everything about that routine, all of those things should be the same. It shouldn't change just because you're at the US Open.
No, 100% not. He will have to definitely do a lot of work to figure out the math problems out there.
Mm-hmm.
Poana greens, they get the marine layer that comes in. The ball's not going to travel as far as it does here in South Georgia. I mean, so it will be a challenge for him for sure. Having never seen that golf course.
Yep.
I mean, just some of the kind of all factor, not so much of the players and stuff. He's been around it enough, even though there'll still be a little bit of that, but just the rough is going to be
crazy,
so thick, and the golf course is going to be so long, and it will be the most difficult golf course he has ever seen, even though he's already played in, 3 U.S. amateurs, and he's played in a tour event at Harbor Town. It's just going to be a different beast.
Yeah.
And but I'll be out there. It'll be good. We'll talk a lot about, just the golf course, getting ready for those physical things. And then, we're going to still execute your routines just like we would if we were literally here at St. Simon's playing retreat, on Wednesday, June the 10th. And that's what we'd be doing, God, I had another thought. Part of the thing that I'm really want players to understand as they do this routine, their job, what I want them to do on the golf course, I want them to figure out the math problem. That's where I need them to be really engaged. I need them to be really engaged when they're practicing, like we talked about in the first time, and working on that and sharpening their skills and improving their competency. And then I need them to be really engaged in the math problem. Once they start their routine, I actually want to take them out of the formula because they're too emotionally invested. And I want them to just let the routine hit the shot. And what I tell them all the time is, like, if you're going through this and then the next thing you know, the ball is gone, that is a good thing.
Right.
If you're really conscious because you've kind of stalled out over the ball and now you know you're hitting the putt, that's generally not a good thing. Right. It's like I'm doing my routine. I look up there, I come back smooth, and the ball's gone. Right. That's what I want. So that sensation of like, oh, I wasn't really ready, the ball's already gone. That's actually a good thing because you trusted your routine enough that you didn't stall to try and emotionally control through the area of impact. That's what we do as golfers, is we try to gain control by basically manipulating the club face, right? Which is the lack of freedom through impact.
Yeah, there's
that's exactly what Bryson was talking about when he was talking about that.
And you know, that's one of those things that from a math problem standpoint, I love the way you break that down there. And for you all listening, there's a great video you can find on YouTube. It's through Sea Island. Actually, it's a YouTube video. I've actually shared this with a few different people, but it's you talking about the putting routine. And you talk about, it looks like a beautiful day. You talk about coming out there and literally approaching the green and approaching the different math problems that the shot might be presenting you in that situation or whatever. It's about a 6-minute video, but you guys should definitely search for that. And we actually, you know what, we'll put that on our show notes for people to access that video because it's a good little quick one just to help people get in that routine.
Yeah. But so as we kind of go through this and you know, we kind of, we're about to get to a good breaking point maybe, but you know, so if you're getting ready to hit a golf shot and this whole idea of playing one shot at a time, it does exist. I do think it's the best way to play golf, but you have to put some meat on the bone of like, what does this actually mean for me to go do? First, I'm going to refocus, figure out the math problem. Second, I'm going to go through my routine, which means physically, visually, and mentally kind of choreograph what's getting ready to happen before the ball leaves. And then right at the very end of your routine is hopefully you do that. You just athletically react to the target and then the ball is gone. So the third R would be react. And the react has two meanings: reacting to the target so that I'm not the opposite of reacting is to guide the ball or steer the ball or try to wish the ball in the hole, right? That's what we're trying to get away from. So, but I refocus, I go through my routine. At the end of the routine, I'm going to react and hit the shot. And then from there, I'm going to relax in between shots, and then I'll start this process over. There is a fair amount of information for sure on the back half of react, because the second meaning of react is how you emotionally react to the shot. Sure. And then what we need to be doing in terms of relaxing in between shots and why that's important and how that basically is the energy source for the other areas. But so that would be kind of where I would want to pick up maybe next time is let's get more into the meaning of react, tie it back into the routine a little bit, and then talk about, how do I, effectively react, because we put a lot of time and energy into this. And money, right? I'm not going to be just happy-go-lucky when I miss a 3-footer.
Right.
How do we effectively process that so that it doesn't derail our round, and I can keep going and get out of my body what I know I can get out of my body when I'm on the range and the putting green, and continue to be able to do that out on the golf course, even though I've just made a mistake that I know is a silly mistake.
Absolutely. And get yourself ready for the next shot. And I think it's a good ending point there, because that's basically, breaking down one shot at a time. And then, as you said, we'll get into react and relax next time when we're getting ready for the Open Championship. Hard to believe, man. This is the fourth major of the year. I mean, it seemed like when we were putting this whole thing together, I kept thinking, oh, this will be like so long between these shows. And then it was like, no, just like boom, boom, boom. They're all right here. So, but we really appreciate, as always, you taking the time to unpack some of those things, and then especially taking the time also to get Spencer on the show. What a treat for us to be able to kind of hear that player perspective, and especially get him right off of such a big win for him, win in the sense that he gets to qualify for the U.S. Open. That's fantastic. A lot of things going through his head next week, but you guys will, I'm sure, get him ready to manage those things.
Oh yeah, it'll be a fun week. It'll be a great learning experience, and so and you never get but one time to have your first U.S. Open.
That's right.
And I tell all my guys, I tell them all the time, and I will harp this, and Spencer's good about it, but I harp on them. If you spend all this time and effort and energy trying to achieve a reward, then once you achieve it, we're going to go enjoy it.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So if we go out there and you're, not liking the setup or you're mopey, I have told more than one player on occasion, hey, how about next year do me a favor and don't sign up for U.S. Open qualifying?
Yeah.
You know it's going to be hard.
Right.
But this is a reward. Let's go enjoy it. Let's go invite this challenge and see how great we can play. And, that's what we're signing up for. So let's go, man.
Yep. It's awesome. My favorite Mo Pickens expression is invite the challenge. I use it all the time. So good stuff. Well, listen, we certainly appreciate you joining us. I know it's a little bit lengthier than we've been doing, but it was a treat to get Spencer on there as well. And we will talk to you, I guess, here in a few weeks now as we get ready for the Open Championship. And so the early part of July will be the next time we get you on the show. But thanks again. We always enjoy it.
Oh yeah, absolutely enjoyed it. Yeah, and y'all enjoy watching.
Well, we're gonna watch, and y'all have safe travels out there.
Okay, thank you.
All right, take care, Mo.
Want to provide feedback or stay up to date with the show? Visit our Instagram page at Mental Advantage Podcast, or you can send us an email at podcast@mentaladvantage.net. To have John Cullen work with you or your team, please write to him at john.cullen@mentaladvantage.net. Thanks for listening to today's episode.